All right, let's talk about something we all depend on, like every single second of every day, but maybe don't think about nearly enough. And that's the natural resources that make our world go round. We're going to dig into what they really are, what happens when we get that idea wrong, and, what it's going to take to build a future that actually lasts. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a huge question. It's one of those things we kind of take for granted, right? All this stuff around us, the water, the minerals, the forests, are they just free gifts from nature? Just there for us to grab?
Now, your first instinct is probably to say, yeah, of course they are. But the real answer is, well, a whole lot more complex and frankly, a lot more interesting. It's got these massive implications for how we all live. Because here's the thing, resources aren't just found, they're actually made.
So if they're made, what does that even mean? To get our heads around this, we first have to figure out what a resource even is. And trust me, it's about way more than just rocks and rivers.
Okay, so here's the textbook definition, more or less. A resource is anything in our environment that helps us meet our needs. Simple enough, right? But, and this but is everything, it only counts as a resource if it checks off 3 really important boxes.
First up, it's got to be technologically accessible. I mean, think about it. For thousands of years, oil was just this useless black goo trapped deep under the ocean floor. It wasn't a resource at all. Not until we invented the tech to actually drill for it and process it. So, yeah, if you can't get to it and use it, it's just stuff.
Number 2, it has to be economically feasible. It's got to make financial sense. We actually have the technology to pull tiny amounts of gold out of seawater. Cool, right? But if it costs you $1 million to get $1 worth of gold, well, that's not a resource. That's a really bad business plan. The numbers just have to work.
And the third one, which is super interesting, is that it has to be culturally acceptable. Basically, we as a society have to be okay with using it. You could have a forest that's packed with valuable timber, but if it's considered sacred by the local culture, then it's not a resource for logging. It serves a different cultural purpose. So when you put all that together, you get this huge takeaway. Nature gives us the raw ingredients, for sure, but it's us, our brains, our technology, our economies, our cultures, that turn that raw stuff into something useful. We're the ones who unlock its potential. We are absolutely a key part of the process. Okay, so what happens when we forget all that? What happens when we just go back to that old idea of resources being free gifts for the taking? Well, the consequences are massive. And honestly, they've shaped a huge part of the world we live in today. Thinking this way creates this terrible domino effect. First, people start using up resources way too fast, often just to make a few individuals rich. That leads to the second problem. All that wealth and all those resources get concentrated in the hands of a few people, splitting society into the haves and the have-nots. And the final domino? It kicks off these huge ecological crises. We're talking global warming, land degradation, you name it.
Gandhi said it perfectly. There is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed. He really nailed it. He saw that the real problem wasn't a lack of stuff, but this dangerous mix of, individual greed and just using technology to exploit nature without thinking. But the good news is, as people became more and more aware of these huge problems, it sparked a kind of global turning point, a search for a better way forward, a path that could take care of people and the planet at the same time. And that path got a name, sustainable development. I just love this definition. It's so simple and powerful. It's about taking care of what we need today, but doing it in a way that doesn't mess things up for future generations. It's not about stopping progress. It's about being smart about it. It's about not stealing from our kids. And look, this idea didn't just pop up out of nowhere. The first real alarm bells started ringing way back in 1968 with the Club of Rome. That concern just kept building until 1987 when the Brundtland Report gave us that awesome definition. And then, in 1992, it went from being an idea to a real global action plan at the Rio Earth Summit. Okay, so it's one thing to have a great idea and a big global meeting, but how do you actually make it happen? How do you take this concept of sustainability and turn it into something real? Well, you need a plan, a really clear step-by-step plan.
And this is pretty much what that looks like. It's called resource planning, and it breaks down into 3 big steps. Step 1, identification. You got to know what you've got and where it is. That means mapping, surveying, the whole deal. Step 2, structuring. You need to build the right systems, the right tech, the right rules, the right organizations to manage everything properly. And finally, step 3, matching. You have to make sure your resource plan lines up with all your other national goals. It can't exist in a bubble.
And this really gets to the heart of it. Conservation isn't just about, saving trees and animals. That's important, but it's so much bigger. When you waste resources or manage them badly, it causes real problems for people and for the economy. So smart conservation is actually one of the best tools we have for building a society that's fair and stable for everyone. Okay, I know this can all sound a little abstract. Resource planning, socioeconomic problems, so let's bring it right down to earth, literally. Let's talk about the one resource we all stand on, the one we need for pretty much everything, land. So if we take a look at a place like India, you can see the land is this amazing patchwork. About 43% is plains. That's your breadbasket where you grow food and build cities. Then you've got mountains, about 30%, which are so important for our rivers and for tourism. And the last 27% are plateaus, which are like treasure chests full of minerals and forests. Each part has a crucial job to do. Now check this out, because this is pretty wild. This chart shows that over almost 60 years, a time of huge population growth and economic change, the total amount of land used for farming and the amount of land covered by forests has barely budged. I mean, think about that. It just goes to show how much pressure we're putting on the land we have. It's not like we can just make more of it. And all that pressure, well, it leads to land degradation, basically wearing out the soil. But here's the hopeful part. Look at this. For every single problem that we cause, deforestation, mining, over-irrigation, there's a human solution right there next to it. We know how to fix this stuff. It's not a mystery. It's really just a question of actually doing it. And that brings us to a pretty deep thought. Almost everything we need to survive, like 95% of our food, shelter, and clothes, it all comes from the land. So this land we're on, it isn't really ours. We're just borrowing it. We inherited it from everyone who came before us, and we have a responsibility to pass it on to everyone who will come after us. So I guess the final question is pretty simple, but also pretty huge. Knowing everything we've just talked about, that resources aren't just freebies, that we're the ones who give them value, and that we're basically just caretakers for a short time, it really all comes down to this. Are we being good ancestors?